Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Artificial Intelligence, Automation, and Qualitative Research, Remaining Transparent in a Digital World. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A panel and we will cover at the end, time permitting. Today's presenters include Silvana Di Gregorio, QSR's Research Director. As a published sociologist, Silvana has used NVivo and its predecessor Nudist since 1995. As QSR's research director, Silvana is responsible for tracking trends in qualitative research to feedback to our software development team. Our other presenter today is Stacy Penna. Stacy is the regional manager here at QSR and has a Doctorate of Education, which she completed using NVivo. And with that, I'll hand it over to Silvana to kick things off.
Okay, thank you, Caitlin. So as Caitlin said, I'm Silvana and I'm the research director of QSR International, and I'm also a sociologist and qualitative researcher. So we live in a rapidly changing world, and the term fake news, which has only entered our vocabulary fairly recently, is heard on a daily basis. We have unprecedented access to large amounts of data, and corporations and governments have unprecedented access to data about us. Controversies around Cambridge Analytica, Facebook, international fraudsters, identity thieves make us aware of how our data can be manipulated. However, data and the algorithms that can be used to mine them are not the enemy. Data collected and mined responsibly can enhance our lives. As social scientists, we have a responsibility to ensure that we take the lead in ensuring that algorithms are developed responsibly, that privacy is protected, that research is conducted under ethical conditions, and that software is developed so that its mechanisms are transparent. Qualitative researchers have the expertise to interpret and analyze unstructured data, and they have developed software tools to support such analysis. These tools themselves are undergoing transformation and are starting to incorporate elements of artificial intelligence. In this presentation, I'm going to cover how these tools are evolving. I will be focusing on QSR's NVivo, but first, I want to put this development in the context of the mass digitization of information that is currently underway. Traditionally, qualitative researchers work with small amounts of data. For most qualitative studies, this is appropriate. The objective is not to be able to generalize from the results, but to get a better understanding of a not well conceptualized area, or to study in depth as opposed to in breadth a particular phenomenon. However, recent developments in technology have led to a huge increase in mass digitization as a way to expand access to books, manuscripts, and artifacts for readers all over the world. The British Library is involved in a mass digitization program of manuscripts, British newspapers going back to 1700, sounds, and UK doctoral theses. The Europeana project is digitizing material and artifacts from over 3,500 libraries, museums, galleries, and archives across Europe. The Library of Congress has been digitizing material from American history, politics, and folk life to recordings of regional dialects and performing arts. Their Chronicling America project scanned and OCR'd more than 1 million pages of American newspapers published between 1836 and 1922. Such data is not only big, but more and more open and linked, and offer valuable research opportunities for scholars. With data sets this size, you need algorithms to support analysis. A simple definition of an algorithm is that it is a structured set of rules for problem solving executed by computers. Without an understanding of those rules, the analysis process is a black box. This was a criticism leveled at analysts of qualitative data before the advent of software for qualitative analysis. Some researchers have argued that software such as NVivo made the analysis process transparent. Some of these same researchers are now concerned that introducing algorithms in the software could bring the black box back and make the software less transparent. Algorithms also have a bad reputation. There is a lot of concern about how big businesses, as well as the public sector, are using algorithms to uncover patterns in human behavior and using this information to base decisions. Dana Boyd discusses how algorithms are being used in the States for predictive policing. Judges use a tool called Compass to decide whether someone who is arrested gets bail or not. The tool determines whether someone is a high risk to society, but it is based on data which reflects the biased judicial decisions of the past. The World Wide Web Foundation have identified the causes of algorithmic discriminations as described in this chart: biased or poor quality data, poorly defined rules, lack of contextual awareness, and feedback loops that reinforce any bias present in the data. FATML, which stands for Fairness, Accountability, and Transparency in Machine Learning, is a community of computer scientists, developers, and researchers. They have produced guiding principles for accountable algorithms. They include an obligation to report, explain, or justify algorithmic decision-making, as well as to mitigate any negative social impacts or harm. Transparency plays an important role in ensuring that algorithms are developed and used responsibly. But what is transparency? There is general agreement that transparency is to ensure that research findings and implications can be trusted. Early on in the development of Cactus, the ability to see how data has been coded was seen by many academics as an advantage over manual processes. And in addition, as this screenshot demonstrates, relationships between codes can be quickly seen by looking at coding stripes within a code. And it was not just making the coding visible that made the research transparent. Having access to the whole data set, the ability to review queries run, memos written, as well as the ability to run new queries, was seen as really breaking open the black box of qualitative analysis. Christy Jackson has done a comprehensive study about transparency in her doctoral dissertation. She distinguishes different types of transparency. There is literature which she describes as creating ideal types of transparency. That includes my work with Judy Davidson, which looks at transparency across the whole research process. Mayrick and the American Educational Research Association have developed similar standards. Jackson did her own empirical research on definitions of transparency among doctoral students who have used NVivo and their supervisors. Her research uncovered the importance of visualizations when these students worked with data. She calls this transparency in making. One of her key findings is that students used visualizations in the software to help make their ideas transparent to themselves. So coding displays were useful in suggesting what codes appeared near one another, which would suggest queries to check the rest of the data. And memos were used to record their developing ideas with links to the data that supported those ideas. So the software enabled the analyst to be transparent to him or herself. Jackson's study predates the introduction of algorithms in NVivo. Cactus software remained truly qualitative for a long time by simply reproducing manual procedures of coding and memoing. Gregor Wiedemann puts
sorry, I just sorry to interrupt. I just saw some questions. I just want to make sure. Are you sharing your screen with the group on top? Some people can't see your slides.
You're kidding. Oh.
Is it up top? There's a little button. There's an arrow you should be able to hit to show screen.
Yeah. It says,
no, they're saying they can see it. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt.
They can see it because it says people can see my screen.
People are saying they can see it. I'm sorry.
Okay, right. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, I was saying Jackson's study predates the introduction of algorithms in NVivo. Cactus software remained truly qualitative for a long time by simply reproducing manual procedures of coding and memoing. Gregor Wiedemann puts this down to skepticism about computational methods, in particular the early history of content analysis quantifying qualitative data, and may explain why qualitative social science lags behind the digital humanities in this area. Nudist, NVivo's predecessor, began with just the basics of coding and the ability to retrieve coding for a theme across all the data. It also enabled the organizing of codes in a hierarchical catalog system, which allowed running queries which cross-referenced several themes. Over time, as computing evolved, NVivo developed more complex queries, the ability to manipulate variables across themes in matrix tables, and numerous ways to visualize the data. The development of the software continued to mirror practices that social science qualitative researcher used or could only use in limited ways with manual processes. However, at a certain point in the evolution of NVivo, it started to borrow corpus linguistic methods, specifically word frequency, text search with the addition of producing keywords and context in word trees, and the ability to cluster data by word or coding similarity. While these tools come from a different tradition, they are not incompatible with many types of qualitative analysis. They can be incorporated in strategies to support thematic analysis. More recently, NVivo has incorporated artificial intelligence in its range of tools. It began with machine learning autocoding. Subsequently, QSR has introduced some text mining tools in NVivo, autocoding by theme and by sentiment. So you can see here the full suite of tools in NVivo. However, only the Plus edition has the tools with artificial intelligence. I will start with machine learning autocoding, or MLAC, which is called autocoding using existing coding patterns in NVivo. MLAC is based on the analyst coding a training set of textual data, at least 10% of the corpus. NVivo will use the coding from the training set to code the rest of the corpus. It uses the term frequency inverse document frequency statistic to calculate how important a word is in a code. The value increases by how many times a word appears in a code, but is offset by how frequent the word is in the whole corpus, adjusting for the fact that some words appear more frequently in general. As you can see, NVivo 12 gives you a list used in a code in weighted order. There had been feedback from users that the earlier version of MLAC in NVivo 10 and NVivo 11 felt like a black box. Addressing these concerns, QSR has adapted MLAC so that users will get feedback on the list of weighted words that the algorithm identifies as significant for a code. Users will be able to deselect terms they decide are not significant for a code before NVivo codes. The software learns which terms are deselected. QSR are working to continue to improve MLAP to increase its accuracy. Unlike MLOC, autocoding by theme or sentiment incorporates a third-party text mining software, the Lexalytics Salience Engine, to find noun phrases. For sentiment coding, NVivo also incorporates Lexalytics. NVivo uses, as I said, Lexalytics Natural Language Processing, or NLP, for text mining. Lexalytics determines context around non-proper noun phrases. Themes are noun phrases that are scored by a process called lexical chaining. Lexical chaining is a process that links noun phrases to related sentences. A long chain of closely related nouns will have a higher score than a chain of tangentially related nouns. NVivo takes the results of the Salience Engine, which is a long list of noun phrases, and groups similar noun phrases under parent themes. The scope of the text impacts the results. But the researcher can preview the results and deselect any before it codes, and then they can review what has been coded more closely. So the researcher still maintains control. Autocoding by sentiment also uses Lexalytics. The Lexalytics Salience Engine identifies emotive words in a text and gives them a score between -1 and +1. But it first tags all the structural elements of a text, such as nouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs, and then identifies mostly adjective-noun combinations, known as sentiment-bearing phrases. Lexalytics have developed a very large database of sentiment-bearing phrases, which they have scored. Based on the phrase score, NVivo will code the sentence, paragraph, or cell of a data set to nodes for very positive, moderately negative, and very negative. It is possible for text to be coded at both positive and negative, but it is easy to review and change the coding, as you can see from the screenshot. The topic of this presentation discusses the importance of transparency in an age where mass digitization of unstructured data means that algorithms need to be introduced to support analysis. I have covered how algorithms work currently in NVivo. I see such artificial intelligence as a research assistant to help with repetitive, tedious tasks and to bring to my attention possible insights. There is a continuum of types of automation that have developed over the years in NVivo. Traditional Cactus products incorporated automation by structure of data to assist with organizing messy data, by text search as a way to aid coding, by incorporating some corpus linguistic methods, such as word frequencies with word clouds, keyword and context with word trees, and cluster analysis. These all are aids to interpretation. However, more recently, with both the increase of availability of large amounts of data and the development of the capabilities of artificial intelligence, QSR have incorporated some artificial intelligence in NVivo. These tools can be seen as supervised text mining. You could argue that NVivo has moved from being a traditional Cactus product to an extended Cactus product. Extended Cactus should not be confused with computational content analysis, which is focused on term occurrences without context. For some people, artificial intelligence raises again the specter of the black box. However, I believe as long as these developments incorporate principles of transparency and control by the researcher, such software can extend traditional qualitative research designs to large corpora. They should be seen as a kind of research assistant, and QSR are continuing to develop these tools with our research base to make them more accurate and transparent. So thank you very much, and The slide shows some references. So I believe Stacy is going to now demonstrate some of these tools for you in NVivo. So I'll just hand over to Stacy. I'm just trying to find Stacy.
I think I can.
There's Stacy.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
I've got make her the presenter. Okie doke. Yes.
Great. Thank you, Silvana. That was very informative. Hi, everyone. My name is Stacy Penna, and I'm the regional manager in North America, as Caitlin mentioned. And I just want to make sure, I'm pretty sure everyone can see my slides. Sorry about that. I think just a few people couldn't. So what does transparency look like in NVivo? So I'm going to go over some of the items that Silvana showed you. But before I do that, I just wanted to talk about, sort of the research process in general in NVivo and the part that I'm going to concentrate on during this presentation. So with NVivo, it really helps you manage your data. So you can bring in all different types of data, video, audio, text, and keep it in NVivo in one place. And it helps you really manage your process of how you're going to analyze your data, how are you going to code, what kind of queries are you going to do. And then also now helps you with that automation piece, which is what Silvana was really talking about. And so I'm going to be showing you our new transcription product and talk about how NVivo 12 Plus can help you with your automated insights. And then going from there, it's going to help you with your rigorous analysis. So how you're coding, the queries that you're performing. It also allows you to share your findings. So there's a lot of visuals in NVivo that you can export to put into a final report, maps, charts, visualizations, and the queries that you're creating. But it also allows you to collaborate either with colleagues, maybe 2 or 3 people, or teams that might be much larger than that. So again, I'm going to be talking about automation in a second here. So the new product we have, NVivo Transcription, can make it easy to transcribe, and I'll show you what that looks like in the software. So all you do is you upload, it auto transcribes, but it also allows you to edit so that you can go through it, and if there's certain terms that it didn't pick up, you can put in with the editing feature. And so why NVivo Plus? So I'll be showing you the automated insights, the automated coding, the sentiment analysis, the pattern-based coding, and the social network analysis. So with that, I'm going to go into the software itself. So right now I'm in NVivo. So for people that maybe aren't familiar with NVivo, it's laid out in that we have tabs on the top to get to different parts of the software. On the left is really where you're going to be organizing your data. So you have a organization for your files and all the different types of data you're collecting. We have a section for your code, so you can organize all your coding. And then in NVivo language, we talk about nodes. So they're basically buckets holding your coding. And then you can also work with cases, which allows you to bring in demographic information in regards to the people you're studying. So it helps you ask those questions like, well, I want to compare what the males and females said or different age groups. And then down here, you also have your search tools queries where you can get to them. And then right here in the middle is really your working space where you're going to be doing most of your work. It's set up a lot like Outlook, so if you're used to that, it might have a similar feel for you. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to explain how you can import and do some of the automated coding. But before I do that, I actually want to show you our new feature, the transcription. So to get to it's actually integrated into NVivo 12. So I can go to create here and just click on NVivo transcription. You have your own account, so it's done by account. And I can then just go here and say I want to add a file I've already imported some audio in NVivo. So I could click on Helen, for example. That's an audio file. It comes up, and it will allow me to then transcribe. So typically, so this is, for example, Ken is, the audio is only over, under 2 minutes. It typically takes a transcription tool half that time to actually transcribe. So I could go in and do that. And I just want to show you what it looks like after it's been transcribed. So I'm in my NVivo transcription account, and you can see here when I upload, I can pick the from multiple, like there's 29 different languages it'll transcribe from. And if I need to, I can go into the editor tool, and you can see here I can put interview. This is Helen talking, and so on. I can easily edit if I need to, save it. And so if I go back into NVivo, I'll show you that Helen's audio was actually imported, meaning it was brought into the NVivo folder. So if I go and find my interviews, I see Helen's audio here. And when I open that up, that the NVivo transcription tool actually transcribed for me, but now I can also fill in here, interview Helen, the speaker's names. So, and it's you won't be able to hear it, but you can see that it's playing along, and I can check it this way too. So what's nice, it's all in one package, and it's easy for you then to start working with your transcriptions. So that's the transcription product. You actually get 15 minutes of a trial. So if you wanted to test it out, it's easy to do and go from there. So now what I wanted to show you is the automated insights. And so the first thing is here, I'm going to import some interviews. Go to my sample data, and I'm just going to pick a few interviews here to bring in. So I come in, and I'm going now pick all of them. To go into auto coding. So I'm going to auto code by theme here. So the software is going through that algorithm that Silvana was talking about. It's going through each of the interviews, and it will help me see very quickly what's in the data. So people typically use this when they first start a project or in NVivo. They might want to just see what's in their data, but they'll also use it after to see, did I reach saturation? Is there something new that the software picked up that I didn't? So you can see here it has the parent node or code, and then the subnodes underneath it that you can go through. And if there's one that you don't think is relevant, you can take it out. I go next, and I can auto code by sentence or paragraph here. That's up to me. It's going to actually be saving it in this folder, an auto code theme, so you can go back and find what was coded. So just thinking there, it'll come up in a second. And so the first visual I see is a hierarchical chart, so I can see what is visually what's there. I can also go to this table, so I can get a quick look at the different nodes or codes that are coming up. So if there's something, obviously phishing is something that people are talking about, so I might want to dig deeper into that. But I also want to show you how you can import surveys, because a lot of times NVivo can do that very quickly for you, and people find it's helpful. So I'll go and find a sample survey. brought in, but you can see here we work with Qualtrics and SurveyMonkey, so you can go right into those accounts and bring in your surveys too. So here we have our survey wizard when we import. So if your survey set up with participants, NVivo will create cases for the participants. It will also go through the closed-ended questions and attribute attributes to those cases. So the demographic information, male, female, whatever you put in the survey. And then it will also go through the open-ended questions and create nodes for those. And so now it allows me just to go through and see do I have everything correct here? Again, I can go through and change things if I want within the survey. It's allowing me to check, are these open-ended or closed-ended? So here I do want this to be an open-ended, so I'm going to change that. And it's going actually auto-code by theme and sentiment for me. And so now it's going through my survey, and you can see it's clicking off everything that it's doing as it goes. So people find this when they're running surveys, that because it does save them time, and but it's also transparent in what we're talking about, because everything shows up in NVivo, so you can show what the software did, how it coded, and how it set up the cases for you. So you can see this is what the survey looks like when it comes in to NVivo. And then I can go here and I can see the difference. So these are my open-ended questions in my survey, and I go through and I can see, are there certain things that are of interest to me? And you can click on these and get right to what people said. So again, part of that transparency. And then also as a hierarchical chart, but it'll also auto-code for sentiment. So it's showing me very positive, and very negative, or a positive too. And again, I can dig deeper in here and go right into the cells and see what people said. And then Silvana also talked about that pattern-based coding, where it's the machine learning. So if you have done some coding already, so you can see here that they have done some coding in with their interviews or their data. So if I look at environmental impacts, there's been some coding here, but I want to see if there's more that I could be doing. So if I want to use the pattern-based coding, I first have to go to my interviews and pick the ones that that I want to have coded that haven't been coded yet. I just want to go make sure I get all of them. Okay, so I'll do that, and then I'll go to auto code here, and I'm going to pick the existing coding patterns. And now I have to tell NVivo what code do I want it to be looking at and coding. So I'm going to go into natural environments and pick that environmental impacts code. And now I need to tell the software, well, what interviews do I want it to look at? And so in this case, I want it to look at Barbara. And let's see, I'm sorry. I'm going to look at Charles, Maria, Susan, and Thomas. And then I'll go next. And so it's done the coding for me. When I open this up, I can see all the different words it's weighted here that NVivo used for the coding. But if I want to just concentrate on the ones that have impact, I can decide what that is. Okay, and then next, and I'll do it to paragraph here and finish. And so it's giving me one, but I think I honestly, I don't think I did it right. So I should have picked the different interviews, but it will do, if you've done the coding, it will help you with that. So sometimes researchers like that, they like when it's auto-coded because they can get a quick look at things, see if they've missed something, but they also like that having some control over their coding if they do the pattern-based coding. And then I also want to show you, I showed you some sentiment, but I want to go back and again, just pick all my interviews and go to auto coding. And in this case, I'll pick sentiment. So it's going to show me the positive and negative that's in the data. And I'll do paragraphs. And so now it's doing that algorithm to go through and see what's positive and negative. And so the first view is that hierarchical chart that's showing me per participant what's positive or negative. And then here it's the interviews that I chose and what's positive and negative in them. And again, anything like this can be exported to put into a report. But if I go to sentiment here, I can see what's in it. And like Silvana mentioned, I can go in, I can actually change it. So the software doesn't always catch, for example, sarcasm. So if you needed to, you could go in and change it. So I can easily change the sentiment. Maybe I want to make it moderately negative instead. And then the last item to show you is the social network analysis that you can now do in NVivo. And for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a participant that I interviewed. So I'm going to pick Maria. And I'm going to choose an egocentric sociogram. And I built these relationships in NVivo already. And so I can see Maria here. And it helps me see her connections. So she's married to Daniel. She goes to this church. So it tells a story here, and it's something that you can easily export to put into your final report and be able to explain the connections that Maria has. And then another type of social network analysis that you can do is if I go here to a Twitter feed. So if you're using social media, you can see here I clicked on a Twitter sociogram, and it's allowing me to see the connections within that. So, you know, the number of tweets or mentions and who's connected to who. And again, you can export this to put in a final report too. So before we take questions, I just want to finish with the PowerPoint. So I mentioned that we talked about automated insights, the automated coding by theme and sentiment, and the pattern-based coding, the social network analysis for relationships. And that's it for the presentation, but we're happy to take questions or show you anything else that you think might be relevant to what you're working on with NVivo. And we do have quite a few questions, so what I'll do, and obviously Silvana will jump in here too.
Caitlin, do you want to just go through the questions so we can just ask us?
Sure. Let's see what we have here. I did see some questions about the recording for the slides, and yes, those will be shared afterwards, as well as some follow-up details. Let's see. Is NVivo open source?
No, it's not.
All right. And then let's see. Silvana, we've got a question here for you. How can we advance our ability to scrape data for qualitative use?
So I'm not sure exactly what whoever's asked that question, what they mean exactly. I mean, perhaps if that person's still there, you can unmute them, and you can just ask directly the question.
Sure. If Victoria, who had asked that, if you are still on, feel free to ask another question. We can go back to that one. We have a question here on transcription. Is the automated transcription all done client side, or is it uploaded somewhere else for processing?
It is uploaded somewhere else for processing. So it's not just on your computer, if that's what the question was.
It is cloud-based. Mm-hmm. So basically but it's totally protected, and it sort of satisfies all the sort of security issues and privacy issues about it. And also, once it's been up, you've uploaded your data into the cloud, you have control after it's transcribed it just to delete it from the cloud so that it's not there anymore, and it's not shared with anyone, basically.
We had a question here. Hang on, I just lost it. How do you determine whether to code a paragraph or a sentence?
So that's when you're automatically coding. I mean, basically, if I'm doing automatically coding for themes, what I decide normally is to code for the paragraph, so I have more context. And then when I go and you always have to review the coding. I mean, it's a research assistant. Just think of it like that. And so therefore, when I review the coding, if the paragraph is too much, I can uncode it. In the same way, if I need to code for more than the paragraph, I can expand the coding. For sentiment, I normally choose sentence. And that's because even within a sentence, you can have mixed sentiment. So therefore, I prefer to just code for sentiment in the sentence, and then as Stacy showed, you can go through and clean it up. But sentiment is quite a tricky thing, as Stacy said. You know, it can't pick up sarcasm, and in fact, a lot of people don't recognize sarcasm, and also, you know, people tend to talk in very nuanced ways, and so that's why you always have to review it. But it does take the heavy lifting out of going through and coding for sentiment.
Great, thank you. Stacy, this might be one that you can answer. Someone would like to see the use of the social network diagram. Do you have anything that you'd be able to show on that?
Yeah, so that was what I'd shown with the picking out Maria, so I'll just do that again. So basically, it allows you to use the social network analysis. And I think people sometimes get confused. It doesn't mean it's all about social media. It's just showing those connections. So it's something that you do have to create the relationships in NVivo to allow this to work. So I would say we have a lot of very good help. NVivo 12, the help menu was much improved. So what I would suggest is go in, you know, search social network analysis, look at relationships, and if you want to learn how to do it, that's one way. We also have training too.
Great. This is a question I'm not sure which of you is the best to answer, but someone has asked, how has NVivo fared with focus group data?
Well, go ahead, Silvana. Oop. Oops, Savannah's muted.
Silvana, you are muted.
So I can start.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Sorry about that. I was speaking and not realizing I was muted. Yeah, no, it works very well with focus group data. In particular, I mean, if you when you prepare your transcripts, if you identify the speakers, you can use the automatic coding feature to automatically code for each speaker. And so therefore you can do quite in-depth analysis if you need to compare speakers on the differences between the men and the women in the focus group, that sort of thing. So it's a very yeah, it's very good with focus group data. I mean, in our sample project, we don't actually have focus groups in there, but there's loads of NVivo projects that have used focus groups.
Yeah, and I was just bringing up what you were talking about, the automatic speaker, so showing that you can do that. So this is with an interview, but we have 2 speakers, so I just put their names in. Go next, and it will actually separate the speakers for me and have it in. So then so I believe it's one speaker would be a node or a case, and the other one would too. Is that right, Silvana?
Yeah. So each they would each be created as a case.
So that's what I just did here. So then you have what Barbara said in one place.
Yeah, and then and so you can just analyze each speaker, but also you can also attach to those cases, the fact that Barbara is female and Henry's male and that sort of thing. If you wanted to do, use queries to compare that. But also you can use, that's one way of analyzing focus groups. But if you want to analyze it in a more general, let's say, holistic way, you can use the relationship feature to code for, so like Barbara, contradicts Henry at this point and code for where she's doing that, or she's agreeing with Henry or disagreeing, and you can use the relationship tool. And then you can actually see it either as a sociogram, which Stacy just demonstrated, or we do have a map feature in NVivo where you can actually literally draw relationships between people in the group. So it depends how you want to analyze your focus groups, but it has the different tools depending on the type of approach analysis you want to do.
We've got another question here sort of along the lines of the auto coding with interviews. Is it possible to tell the software not to include the interview's lines? Is it possible to talk about the exclusions that you can do?
Not to include the interview lines? I'm not sure.
The questions, maybe the questions.
I think the questions.
Well, there is a way that you could first, code for the questions and then code for just the responses, and then run it on that. The autocode on just the responses and not the questions. So that entails sort of like a 2-step process to do that, as opposed to just doing, because it will pick up the autocoding by theme, it will pick up the questions. But if you use the questions in a different format, I think they're in italics here, you can visually see that and then exclude that. So it depends which way you want to do it. Exclude it first, or let it run through and then uncode it afterwards.
I have some more clarification on that scraping question that we started off with. So
Okay.
it sounds like it is scraping with regards to like from the web and social media. Um, and then some additional detail. A lot of big data uses large corpora of web-based data that needs to be scraped. Right now, there are limited ways of getting such data into NVivo automatically. Are there best practices to get the big data collection closer to the big data analysis in NVivo?
Right. So, I mean, first of all, just to point out that in terms of social media data such as Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, there is the add-on NCapture, which comes with NVivo, that is, which is an add-on onto your browser, both Chrome and Internet Explorer, and it's literally a little button so that you can, click on a Twitter feed, and it will scrape it, and then you can import it into NVivo. And of course, there are limitations to that because it's controlled by Twitter. It's composed by, it's like if there's a lot of people who, if it's a very popular hashtag, for example, you might get less of it than if it's a not popular one. You can get the whole thing. So there are variations in terms of getting like the whole corpora. And also, basically, the APIs are controlled by Twitter, by Facebook, etc., and they are restricting, particularly Facebook, are restricting access to that, given to the recent issues that Facebook had with Cambridge Analytica. With the other corpora that's available on the web, there's a lot of basically pre-preparation that you have to do. It depends, again, it depends on the corpora. It depends on how it's organized. So basically, if you look at, again, on our help in terms of, if stuff is available as a Excel file or a CVS file, that sort of thing, to see the best way of formatting it to bring it in. But yeah, it does require a lot of figuring out how best to bring it in. The other thing I have to say that, because corpora can be massive, is that there are limits to how big you can, how much information you can put in NVivo at the moment. So there are limits to that.
Okay, thank you, Silvana. We have another question here. I'm sorry, were you done answering that question, Silvana? I didn't mean to.
Yes.
Okay. Someone has been using the auto coding with NVivo 9 and just wanted to see how it compares with NVivo 12. Not sure if either of you could just speak to any of the improvements and enhancements that have gone from 9 to 12.
Oh, it's major. I mean, first of all, 9 has no artificial intelligence. So 9 has no automatic coding by theme or sentiment. Or the machine learning autocoding. Machine learning autocoding first came in NVivo 10, and it had just basic. It had no artificial intelligence. It had basic things like you could code by the structure of your transcript, so you could code for speakers, and you could automatically code for surveys, but not with the nice little survey wizard that Stacy just went through. So the survey wizard that Stacy showed has made importing survey data very easy, as opposed to 9, which there's a 3-step process to do it. Yeah, I mean, in terms from 9 to 12, I can't. I don't know, Stacy, do you want to add any more?
Yeah, I mean, I think. So I think the only thing 9 really could do, which was automatic, is really the word frequency and text, right? Text searches too. That's what I'm guessing. but it doesn't do what we just showed you. And not that you have to upgrade, but the goal of the of QSR is to get everyone on the latest version. So the upgrade pricing is pretty, I think, reasonable right now. So what I would do is do a trial of 12 and see if it's worth upgrading. But it might be something you might want to look into right now.
And the other thing I should add is that 12 actually was redesigned to make it more user-friendly. So I don't know if you can see the screen here, but you don't have that many tabs up front. And, when you need a tab, like if Tracy opens up Barbara, for example, and she wants to edit Barbara, you can see there's a document tab just came up. And if she clicked to edit, another tab for edit comes up. So those menus there only come up when you need them, as opposed to in 9 you had a much bigger ribbon, and also it was hard to find what you needed to do when you needed it. So and also, if you notice, the navigation view has been redesigned. So yeah, there was a lot of work done, a lot of working with qualitative researchers who've been using NVivo on the better way of logically organizing it. So it's been designed so it's much more user friendly.
Great, thank you. Looks like we might have time for 1 or 2 more. There's a question about how you can use NVivo for quantitative analysis. I don't know if that is something that is you can show quickly or just speak to.
Yep, I can. You please jump in here, Silvana. But one thing that's new in 12 is the crosstab, which was under. I just went to Explore, and it's one of the queries. So, for example, to do a crosstab, I'm just going pick some nodes under economy here. And then I can also use my the attributes that I put in. So I'm studying people here. I want to see what my participants said, and I'll just first do it by age group and run the query. So it's giving me a table here that is showing me the different counts for coding, and it's actually adding up the total unique values. And then I'm also going to add one more attribute. So I'm also going to add gender, run the query. So now it's showing me by age group, is there a difference between female or males? And you can now export this type of table into, I can pick SPSS file. I mean, you can do it in Excel and put it into other quantitative software, but it can now go into a SPSS file. You can also do the same thing with matrix coding queries too. So that's one. But if I go to matrix coding queries, same thing. I can select items that I want to go in. So if I go to nodes, and I'll just do the same. And then here I might want in the columns to select some interviews here. And I'll run a query. And so it's going to go through and show me, based on the people, my interviews, what was coded. The only difference is with a matrix coding query, it's not going to add it up on the bottom. But again, I can export this into SPSS and run it in the quantitative software. You can also bring in, if you have, like, let's say you've done a survey and you have information, that information in SPSS, you can import that now into NVivo easily, and it'll create the demographics and the cases for you, I believe. Silvana, do you want to add anything?
No, I think you've covered it pretty well. I mean, obviously, NVivo is a qualitative research package, but what it's done is, by having this direct link to SPSS and also the new crosstabs query, which does add things up. It's sort of giving you the flexibility to then use the power of SPSS or whatever quant package you're using to do the sort of statistical analysis that you need to do. So therefore, there isn't statistical analysis within NVivo, but you can, as I say, you can export stuff out of it with the crosstabs in particular to do further work. Again, if it makes sense to do so, if you have a large enough data set to do that.
All right, thank you for that. We are just at the top of the hour here, so we will finish up today's session. As we mentioned earlier, a recording of today's slides will be shared with everyone, so you can check this out and share with your colleagues on your own time. And with that, I thank you. And Silvana and Stacy, if you have any other final words.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if we couldn't get to all your questions, but if you need anything answered, please feel free to email us using this email address, and we'll make sure we get things answered for you.
Yes, and I should add that we will be sending you a link to, I have produced a white paper that expands more on my talk about transparency in an age of mass digitization and algorithmic analysis. And also, if you want to see further about the additional features that we have in NVivo 12 Plus, there is now a video that I recently did about that, and you can have a link to look at that as well.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Caitlin and Silvana. And like we said, if you have any questions, just contact us. But otherwise, have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you.